media as a gun expert. Here's part of his take.
The way Rick Scott has been talking about it is like, when the shooter arrives, we need a metal detector and a guard.
Point, with Rick Scott, it's like, when I get elected to Senate, we're not going to let that happen. What sick are out there that want to continue to sell more guns, murder more children, and honestly just get reelected? What type of person are you when you want to see more money than children's lives? What type of person does that?
We have to use our white privilege now to make sure that all of the voices that have, all of the people that have died as a result of this and haven't been covered the same can now be heard.
Sell more guns, murder more children, and get reelected. That is David Hogg's view of the other side of the debate. Emma Gonzalez, meanwhile, another celebrated survivor of the shooting, basically agrees with that. She recently said in a speech, quote, "I don't really care what people who defend the Second Amendment have to say." Let's take this seriously. We should take it seriously because it's serious. If you honestly don't care what the people who disagree with you think, if you believe they want to, quote, murder more children, then who are you? Well, you're angry. You're definitely not fit to be making policy for the rest of us. You are, by definition, an extremist. You should not have power if you really believe anyone who disagrees with you is evil and wants to kill the innocent. Maybe a journalist could point that out, but no. Journalists agree with Emma Gonzalez and David Hogg, so they've slapped them on the cover of Time magazine and declared that they're heroes and you're not allowed to disagree with them. Here's more David Hogg from earlier today, by the way, explaining that the Bill of Rights matters when it applies to what he can wear to school. Watch.
After we come back from spring break, they're requiring all of us to have clear backpacks. It's unnecessary, it's embarrassing for a lot of the students, and it makes them feel isolated and separated from the rest of American school culture, where they're having essentially their First Amendment rights infringed upon because they can't freely wear whatever backpack they want.
So controlling your backpack abridges your First Amendment rights because the First Amendment applies to backpacks, but the Second Amendment does not apply to firearms. How does that work exactly? Wait, you say, why are you picking on David Hogg? He's only a kid. He shouldn't be held to adult standards of reasoning or be expected to think critically about the consequences of what he espouses. Well, yeah, exactly. He's a kid. He's just been through unspeakable tragedy. And that's why adults shouldn't be using him or his friends to push their agendas on the rest of us. Mark Glaze is co-founder of Guns Down, a gun control group, and he joins us now. So this is the problem that I have, is that if you sincerely believe that people who disagree with you want to kill children, then you shouldn't be involved in making policy, because that's exactly what we don't need more of, it seems to me. Why is he being pushed to the front of this movement?
Well, look, I think you ought to cut this kid a little bit of slack. You know, he was at school when 17 of his friends were killed the other day. Not everything he says should be taken as, you know, gospel from the gun violence prevention community about what we ought to be doing about guns.
Well, I just conceded that in my script because I agree with that this is a kid who just saw unspeakable tragedy. He saw his classmates killed, and that's exactly why he shouldn't be involved in formulating a response to it.
Yeah, but
because he's a kid. So you can't simultaneously argue that you need to shut up and listen to him, and if you don't, you're bad, which is what the left is arguing, and that we shouldn't take what he says seriously or literally. We have to kind of choose one, and I'm kind of happy to choose the first one.
You know, I think these kids are doing what citizens ought to do. They had a terrible experience, and they're trying to do something about it. Basically, what they're saying is the same thing that 70% of the public is out there saying, which is what we're doing with guns right now isn't working. We ought to have stricter gun laws. Now, let's have a conversation about what those gun laws should look like. I think there's a lot.
But you don't see that what the left is doing is short-circuiting honest conversations. I, for example, have tried every night since that shooting, almost every single night, to get a leader of a gun control group on. You're the only one who comes, the only one. No one else will come. I know a lot about guns. I'm interested in the topic. No one wants to have the debate. Instead, they throw David Hogg in your face and say, be quiet, and then allow David Hogg to, uninterrupted, impugn the character of anyone who disagrees with him. It's demagoguery. That's not how adults behave.
Yeah, but it's also not fair to pull one comment out of one interview out of the
All right, I'll pull another one. Here's an idea that, again, I'm being forced to take this seriously. I would be very happy to say, poor David Hogg, man, his friends got killed. I get it. He's upset. My children would be upset. I would be upset. But the left is forcing me to listen carefully to what he says because it could become the law I have to abide by. For instance, this is in the manifesto from Parkland Kids. It said there ought to be a database of which guns are sold in the United States. That ought to be paired to the status of the owner's mental health. Privacy laws should be amended. So they're saying, this march is saying, that HIPAA laws should be suspended and the U.S. government ought to keep your medical records. The public doesn't support that. Nobody supports that.
I don't know quite what that is talking about.
You want me to read it to you again? To do so, privacy laws should be amended. that a database of all guns sold in the United States ought to be paired with a database of the gun owner's mental health and physical capability.
I think what he's probably saying is that if you are actually found to be mentally unstable by a judge, that ought to be relevant to whether or not you can buy a gun.
That's already the law, as you know. That is already the law. If you're adjudicated mentally ill, it's on the form, it's in the FBI background check. I've purchased guns and filled that out, so has everyone who's done it in this country. So that already exists. Look, I agree that there needs to be a stricter standard that keeps crazy people from getting guns. I totally agree. But to act as this march does, that if only we had the will to overcome the NRA, it's easy, we could fix it, is a lie. It's a total lie. This is complicated stuff.
Yeah, but if you take a look at, I've only taken a little bit of a look at their manifesto, but it lists like 10 or 15 different things that we ought to be doing. It's not just about one thing. And I think that's a fact. Look, there is no one legal change that's going to stop mass shootings from happening tomorrow, or that's going to stop 100 people from being killed at the barrel of a gun every day in this country. But there's a lot of things that we could be doing differently, and I think you have to concede what we're doing right now isn't working.
True, and I'm just very concerned that all this energy and the money from all these various billionaires is not making it better. It's focused instead on taking the rights away of people who didn't do anything wrong, like me, and like all of middle America, whom they hate, obviously. And there's no emphasis at all on, for example, the 4 cops with guns who stood by while 17 people were murdered. Why are they never mentioned? I'm a little confused. Talk about a failure of authorities. Where are their names here?
Look, I've heard them talked about plenty, and they all did.
Really?
And they all did the wrong thing. Yeah, the last time I was on Fox News, we talked about that.
No, but it's a serious thing. So the NRA didn't shoot anybody. You probably don't like the NRA, but they're almost overwhelming law-abiding people. They didn't shoot a single person. These police officers, deputies, stood by and allowed this murder to take place, and yet they're getting a complete pass. Why?
Look, I don't know whether they're getting a pass or not. That's up to the people of Florida, and I hope those people aren't police deputies anymore.
No. It's up to the people running the march to set the emphasis here. Something terrible just happened. There are a lot of lessons from it, and that lesson has been buried intentionally because it doesn't entail taking away the Second Amendment rights of the innocent.
Yeah, but I think what they're saying is these mass shootings keep happening. 100 people keep getting shot every day who shouldn't be shot and have the right to, life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. What we're doing right now isn't working. Here's a list of 10 or 15 things that we are going to advocate for that we think should make a difference. There's going to be hundreds of thousands of people out there on the mall tomorrow, many of whom aren't students, who have said things you disagree with, who think that what we do isn't working. Here are the things that we should be doing.
Do we as people who seek to influence public policy have an obligation to think through what we advocate for, to learn about it,
Sure.
to consult the reams of social science that has been conducted on this subject before we advocate for something? Or is it enough to say, I feel upset, do something?
No, look, I think there is nothing unusual and a lot of things that are right about students who had a horrible experience, who believe that we should be doing things differently, coming to Washington and leading a bunch of other like-minded people, like 70% of the public.
But why doesn't someone tell this kid you're not allowed to accuse people who disagree with you of advocating for murder? That's an awful thing to say.
Well, you're saying.
But why aren't you? You're the one. I mean, he's doing a dozen interviews a day, and nobody has the courage to say, son, I'm sorry, I know you're upset, but you're not allowed to accuse people of wanting to kill children unless you can prove it.
Look, I think he was mad at the governor of his state for not doing enough. And you know what? Governor Rick Scott didn't do enough. Although I have to say, I'm kind of a fan of Rick Scott because he never met a gun or an NRA extremist he didn't like. And even he bucked the NRA because what they don't want us to do is so ridiculous.
Well, I think Rick Scott is a buffoon. That's my view. But it doesn't make me, and I do think that, but it doesn't make me any less appalled by the killing. And I hope that you and everyone else who seeks to reduce the power of the Second Amendment would at least acknowledge that I care as much about kids as anybody else does. Do you see what I'm saying?
Sure. Look, I absolutely believe that when Congress actually agrees to have a debate about this, they will go to their committees, they will go to the floor, and they will have a reasoned debate where they talk about the social science evidence about what works and what doesn't.
I hope so, and I hope it won't be dismissed as NRA lobbying, because I think these are real questions. Like, we need to reach adult conclusions.
Agreed.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're the only one who comes on. I definitely appreciate that. The media have had a lot of fun pushing unproved claims between Trump and Russia. Okay, now here's another angle that you may not have seen. Claims the NRA has been